So, good afternoon and welcome to another class on corporate governance from Naipunya Business School. So, this is the Corporate Governance University of Calicut, course number BUS 4C22, and for semester 4. And myself, Dr. Jacob PM, Director, Naipunya Business School. As a part of COVID, we are conducting online classes as well as videos also. I hope students would get benefited out of corporate governance videos. Now today I will be looking at syllabus module 3 part 2. Kumaramangalam committee, Narayanamurthy committee, Naresh Chandra committee and J.J. Rani committee on corporate governance, World Bank and corporate governance. In the last class, module 3 part 1, we have seen various committees and acts of outside India, right from Sarbanes-Oxley Act onwards to Greenberry Committee or SEC. So this time we will be looking at corporate governance committees which has happened in India. Kumaramangalam Committee, Narayanamurthy Committee, Naresh Chandra Committee and J.J. Irani Committee on Corporate Governance, World Bank and Corporate Governance. The committees, all these committees have got a lot of importance as far as corporate governance is concerned. Why? Because every committee lay down the foundation for accountability, responsibility, transparency as far as corporations are concerned. And these committee and guidelines, once implemented, have been able to control a large number of scams in India. However, there will be also the more committees in days to come because the change in different types of scams which are happening. So hopefully, let us conclude that these committees would put up a lot of support as far as having a perfect corporate governance in India. Okay, so we start with the different committees. This is the 7th module uh, being shown to you as a part of corporate governance syllabus, and request you to follow the other 6 parts also, and again from here also another 3 more parts, 8, 9 and 10 videos also will be sent to you. So please do subscribe Naipunya Business School YouTube channel also, and definitely there is a lot of learning material available for all of you from our side. So let us start the class. Now, Securities Exchange Board of India. I am sure all of you know SEBI. SEBI is Securities Exchange Board of India, which was constituted as a part of a big scam which has happened in India, which is called as the Harshad Mehta scam. This Harshad Mehta scam and the formation of SEBI has been discussed in the previous modules. However, once again to just remind you that the government has passed in the parliament an act on to form actually Securities Exchange Board of India, which is basically an autonomous body and which takes care of the investors, which takes care of all the investors who invest especially in listed companies. And SEBI has been formed because it is based on the requirements of World Bank, where we are members, as well as International Monetary Fund also. And SEBI has taken up a lot of policy guidelines from different committees that has taken place in the world. That is the reason I told you in the last class that the committees, like right from Sarbanes-Oxley to the SEC or even to Cadbury or Mervyn King committee, had a lot of importance as far as SEBI is concerned, because SEBI was actually taking it from various committees which were there abroad. Now, what is the role of basically SEBI? SEBI is basically to protect the interest of investors. However, other things that you would find is SEBI sets standards in which security markets must operate, protecting the rights of issuers and investors. Later, you will study about Sahara scam, in which Sahara the company corporate called as Sahara has taken actually money from the investors in the form of bond, and there was actually a legal tussle between Sahara as well as SEBI also, which ultimately SEBI won. So SEBI usually sets standards how investors should act in the security market, how promoters should act, what are the acts that are required for uh, looking at the for protecting the interest of the investor or maybe the promoter or even for the stakeholders. So SEBI has the power to investigate circumstances also where market for its players have been harmed and can enforce governance standards and directives. SEBI is an autonomous body instituted by the Government of India, and SEBI has its own free will of actually taking decisions or conducting investigations as far as investors' interests are concerned. SEBI also has an appeal process in place where it ensures accountability as well as transparency also. Now, SEBI's role in corporate governance. Since its setup in 1992, SEBI has taken up a lot of initiatives and appointed various committees and brought amendments to the Clause 35B and Clause 49 of the listing agreement. This Clause 49 and 35B has been dealt in the previous modules. However, I will be once again going through that. Under Clause 35B, the issuer has agreed to provide e-voting. Issuer has agreed to provide e-voting for all the investors or the shareholders, and whenever they want to take a decision. Now, in the general meeting, either it can be through general meetings or through post ballot facility to shareholders. So, if you are a shareholder of a company, a listed company, every year they will send you the financial statements, and apart from that, they will also offer you opportunity for postal ballot because you may be a minority stakeholder. For majority stakeholders, they may go and report there directly. Whereas in case of minority, you can definitely send your votes by postal or through email also. Now, there also SEBI talks about other things like board composition. I'm sure all of you remember that wherever the 50% of the board members are non-executive directors, there should be one director in the board also. Now, 50% of the board members means the chairman is a executive member, and if it is 33 percentage, then the chairman would be a non-executive director or an independent director. And both the cases, they talk about one women director in the board. Of course, this has happened recently, and many companies are running around to see that the vacancy of the woman director in the board is fulfilled. Restrictions on independent directors also. Under the revised clause, no person can be an independent director of more than 7 listed companies in India. Now we will look at some of these committees. Kumaramangalam Committee, which was set up in 1999 under Sri Kumaramangalam Birla, member of the SEBI board, to promote and raise the standards of good corporate governance. The primary objective of the committee was to view the corporate governance from the perspective of the investors and shareholders and to prepare a code to suit the Indian corporate environment. The committee divided the recommendations into two categories, namely mandatory and non-mandatory. So this was one of the initial assignment of SEBI to create actually a code for the Indian corporate environment, because till that time there was no code existing as far as corporate governance was concerned. We were just depending upon the Indian Companies Act. But when Kumaramangalam committee came, definitely the SEBI has instituted them to create actually a code for all the Indian corporates as well as for multinationals which are operating in India. The recommendations which are absolutely essential for corporate governance can be defined is classified as mandatory and others non-mandatory or but desirable also. And change of laws can also be classified as non-mandatory also. Now, what are the mandatory recommendations as far as Kumaramangalam committee is concerned? The mandatory recommendations apply to listed companies with share capital of 3 crores and above. So this is the condition for any company which is listed in the Indian stock market and moreover has got a share capital of more than 3 crores. Composition of the board of directors should be optimum, combination of executive and non-executive directors. Audit committee should contain 3 independent directors with one having financial and accounting knowledge. Remuneration committee should be set up for decisions on remuneration of independent directors. The board should hold at least 4 meetings in a year with a maximum gap of 4 months between 2 meetings to review operational plans, capital budgets, quarterly results, minutes of committees meeting. Director shall not be a member of more than 10 committees and shall not act as a chairman of more than 5 committees across all companies. I mean all the listed companies in India. Management discussion and analysis report covering industry structure, opportunities, threats, risk, outlook, internal control system should be ready for external review. All information should be shared with shareholders in regard to their investments also. So these are some of the mandatory requirements as far as Kumaramangalam committee is concerned. There are certain non-mandatory recommendations also as far as role of chairman. What is the chairman expected to do? The role of chairman, whether he is coming from he is an independent director or maybe a person who is from the promoters also. Remuneration of the committee of board, and some of these non-mandatory recommendations that you would find have been clarified in the subsequent committees which came up, which they and some of the additional things also has been added. Now, Kumaramangalam Birla committee was one of the pioneers as far as corporate governance was concerned. So they talked about postal ballot. They spoke about half-yearly shareholders' right for receiving half-yearly financial performance document, sale of whole or substantial part of the undertaking, corporate restructuring, further issue of capital, venturing into new business, I mean IPO. All those things were applied to all listed private and public sector companies, their directors, management, employees, and professionals associated with such companies. So Kumaramangalam had two types. One was mandatory and the other was non-mandatory recommendations. Now comes to actually the second one, which is called as Narayanamurthy Committee. Now when Narayanamurthy Committee came, it was actually more prominent because when Kumaramangalam Birla gave a guideline for all these things, Narayanamurthy Committee put it very straightforward as far as the corporations are concerned. So let us look at all those things. The committee's recommendations are based on the relative importance of fairness, accountability, transparency, ease of implementation, because it was based on actually good governance, verifiability, enforceability, audit related to audit committees, it was audit reports, independent directors, related parties, RPT transactions, risk management, directorships and director compensation, codes of conduct, financial disclosures. The key mandatory recommendations focus on strengthening the responsibilities of the audit committee. So according to that, at least one member should be financially knowledgeable and at least one member should have accounting or related financial management proficiency. So one person should be financially knowledgeable in the sense, should have accounting. He should be good at accounting and the other person should be good at financial management. There are totally 3 people in the audit committee. So Kumaramangalam Birla was talking about 3 members when it came to Narayana and having knowledge of finance. But Narayanamurthy committee said people should, out of those 3 people also, one person should be good in accounts and the other person should be good in financial management. Quality of financial disclosures. Improving the quality of financial disclosures, including those related to related party transactions. Now what is related party transactions? Related party transactions are actually the transactions made by the company towards an associate company or its own group. There have been various issues involved with the related party transactions, especially in the case of Satyam, where Satyam was actually transferring the profits, inflated profits that they show that they were transferring into another company called as Mitas. Mitas is actually the reverse of Satyam. If you can write the reverse of Satyam, it is called as Mitas. And it was transferring these benefits to Mitas, which was not a listed company. So here actually Narayana Murthy committee said many of the companies were doing this related party transactions, which was taking away the profits of this company. So those things should not be done. If at all they are doing it, it should be with the knowledge of the board, with the board, without which they should not do it. Now, another thing which Narayana Murthy committee said was proceeds from IPO or initial public offerings. Companies raising money through IPO should disclose to the audit committee the uses, applications of funds by major all the expenses also, capital expenditure, sales and marketing, working capital, etc. So whatever money that they generate in the stock market also should be informed, right to should be disclosed or informed to the audit committee as well as even in general body meeting also. Other recommendations were requiring corporate executive boards to assess and disclose business risk in annual reports of company. What are the risks that you find as far as the corporation is concerned that should be disclosed in the corporate executive reports? Should be obligatory on the for the board of a company to lay down the code of conduct for all board members and senior management of a company. So even the code of ethics for board members as well as senior management, including CEOs, CFOs, COO, and even for top managing directors, the top managers and board senior management should be having a code of conduct. Nominee of the board on public sector companies shall be similarly elected and shall be subject to the same responsibilities and liabilities as other directors. Now, government usually appoints actually nominees in public sector. Now, one of the problem with public sector companies is the ruling party decides who's supposed to be the chairman, and usually it comes either in bureaucratic or political red tapeism. So the people who sit there, the chairman will be basically the person who is aligned to the government. As a result, the person does not have any power, and possibly he may even be biased also. So here actually Narayana Murthy committee has suggested that it should be the same way. Like a person in the chairman should be elected in the same method by which is happening in the private or public listed companies also. And improved disclosures relating to compensation paid to non-executive directors also should be there. And then whistleblower policy also. Person who observe an unethical or improper practice should be able to approach the audit committee without necessary informing their superiors also. So it gives actually more of transparency, more of accountability as far as this committee recommendations are concerned. Now let us go to Naresh Chandra committee. It happened in 2002, and Naresh Chandra committee made certain recommendations as far as corporate governance, financial and non-financial disclosures, and independent auditing of board, independent auditing and board oversight of management. So that was some of them. It was financial and non-financial disclosures, independent auditing, and board oversight, which oversight board was present with Sarbanes-Oxley. So that is brought across by Naresh Chandra committee. The recommendation made all efforts to bring transparency in the structure of corporate governance through the enactment of Companies Act and its amendments. So the Companies Act was enacted at a later stage to include, to make it more transparent as far as accounts are concerned. The committee also reviewed the governance issues related to appointment of auditors, fees of auditors, rotation of audit firms or partners, and make the crucial role of independent directors on the board. This was actually proposed by Mervyn King committee, and now in Naresh Chandra committee has also adopted all these things in India. Now Naresh Chandra committee also went on to say that disclosure of contingent liabilities, especially what is the liability that the company has as far as as far as as far as the public or to anybody, it should be described in plain English of each material with its risk and should be accompanied by auditors clearly worded statement on the management's review. CEO certification. All the listed companies, there should be a certification by the CEO and the CFO, who should state that to the best of the knowledge and belief that these things are true. So they cannot actually get outside without actually giving, without actually signing these details. So it makes them responsible to as far as the running of the company is concerned. Independence of audit committee. All members of the audit committee shall be non-executive directors. Audit committee nobody from executive directors is allowed. It should be all non-executive directors. The committee recommends that accounting and bookkeeping services, internal audit, financial information system design, actuarial services, broker, dealer, investment advisor, or investment banking services should not be provided by an audit firm to any audit client. So they should not also similarly give these type of support like some work like financial information systems design, actuarial, because they have to remain unbiased, they have to remain independent. So they should not be having any services as far as the company is concerned. Now, the same was raised by Mervyn King also, saying that audit firms should keep away from the company in any mode. In the sense, they should not be partners, they should not advise them, they should not get any other, they should not collect money from any other services other than auditing. So that makes them to be very independent. Partners and at least 50% of the engagement team responsible for audit of either a listed company should be rotated every 5 years. So there should be a rotation also as far as audit is concerned. Audit committee of the board shall be the first point of reference regarding the appointment of auditor. So audit committee inside the board of directors should be the people who will appoint basically the auditors. There should be established 3 independent quality review boards: QRB, that is ICI, ICSI, and ICWA to periodically examine and review the quality of audit, secretarial and cost accounting firms, and pass judgment and comments on the quality and sufficiency of these systems, infrastructure, and practices. So they talk about even audits also, even auditing also. ICI, ICSI, ICWA should periodically examine basically the quality of the audit. Percentage of independent directors, not less than 50% of the board directors of any listed company as well as unlisted public limited companies with a paid up share of more than 10 crore above, turnover of up to 50 crores and above should consist of independent directors. Earlier it was 3 crores, then now the limit has been extended up to 10 crores or turnover of up to 50 crores also. Now here actually they have made it very clear. It is not that 1/3, it is 50%. Earlier, 50% was limited only to the chairman, who was also a promoter. But now it says that everyone, every company, not less than 50% of the board directors should be independent directors. Percentage of independent directors, not less than 50% of the directors at any listed company, as I have already told you. Then disclosure on duration of board meetings. The minutes of the board meeting and audit committee meetings must disclose the timing and duration of each such meeting, in addition to the date and member in attendance. Remuneration of non-executive directors. The statutory limit on sitting fees should be reviewed periodically, and although ideally it should be a matter to be resolved between the management and the shareholder. Now, director of the company. FA should encourage institution of prominence, including the proposed Center for Corporate Excellence, to have regular training programs for independent directors. Directors should also be trained on the type of questions that they need to ask, so that they will be able to do a justice as far as in that position is concerned. A corporate serious fraud office (CSFO) should be set up in the Department of Company Affairs with specialists included on the basis of transfer, deputation, and on special contracts also. So corporate serious fraud office also should be set up. J.J. Irani Committee on Corporate Governance. Now this has happened in 2004 under the chairmanship of J.J. Irani, then director of Tata Sons, and to make recommendations on company law, and he has made certain recommendations on the committee. Responses received from various stakeholders on the concept paper, issues arising from the version of Companies Act 1956, and bring about compactness by reducing the size of the act and removing redundant provisions. So this man, J.J. Irani committee, brought in actually changes as far as stakeholders or maybe issues in the Companies Act, and bring about compactness by reducing the size of the act and reducing unwanted provisions also. The Irani Committee also offered in enabling easy and unambiguous interpretation by recasting the provisions of the law, providing greater flexibility in rulemaking to enable timely response to ever-evolving business models, protecting the interest of stakeholders and investors, including small investors, and suggestions that to develop the company law in India to go far in laying a sound base for Indian corporate growth in the coming years. So you would find that these two, Kumaramangalam as well as Narayanamurthy, laid basically the foundation of a corporate governance in India. However, the other problems associated with that has been reduced by J.J. Rani committee also. Now we will look at what is the role of World Bank. The day that we became a member of WTO and World Bank, uh, we are also indebted to the corporate governance, because World Bank and corporate governance talks about, like the world, about globalization, and all that, free market economy and all those things. So here actually the corporate governance is being instituted by the World Bank through some of its organizations also. One of the organizations that we have been studying from the beginning is basically Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, called as OECD, which has laid actually a lot of policies and guidelines as far as corporations are concerned. Now, why did it come into extent? One, as we have already told you, with the advent of WTO and WTO as well as World Bank, we are guided by certain rules and regulations towards multinationals operating in this country. Now, we cannot be actually one sided. So, generally, we need to become actually, we need to accept the policies or what is existing in the world over. And India also has to be a part of it, because we have allowed for FDI. Okay, foreign direct investment has already come, and this FDI, once it has come, we need to have practices which are according to the practices which are followed elsewhere in the world also. So for that, we have corporate governance guidelines uh, uh, which are being given by OECD and Financial Stability Board, as well as the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision also. So now World Bank, WTO, and corporate governance has become an integral part of the Indian corporate governance system also. And this looks at actually improving the corporate governance in emerging market countries by providing technical assistance through leadership, support to programs, lending investment operations, and through global engagement. So, whichever World Bank, when it wants to support actually our initiatives, they are very pretty clear that the corporate governance of this country follows norms which are followed everywhere in the world. So, World Bank has got a lot of role as far as corporate governance is concerned, and OECD as well as the four P's of corporate governance are all the guidelines of World Bank and WTO and OECD. Now, what are the things that World Bank and corporate governance recommend? One are the focus areas they have: developing the legal and regulatory foundation for corporate governance of listed and unlisted companies. So, the country, as far as India is concerned, it has to follow the legal and regulatory foundation. We know very well that there are several regulatory bodies also as far as India is concerned, right from SEBI onwards. So that is one of the things that is so initiate. So even SEBI was basically an initiative of World Bank. So that is one regulatory foundation has to be there. Then improving the governance of banking institutions, particular to state-owned banks. So especially in the case of banks, as far as India is concerned, governance of banks, because banks often had large number of scams, and it was important that the governance of banking institutions should be protected by this government. Improving the governance of microfinance institutions and financial cooperatives. Now, microfinance is also another area, because that is an emerging area as far as World Bank is concerned. World Bank is being contributing a lot of money towards development of people through microfinance initiatives also and financial cooperatives also. Strengthening the capacity of regulators and supervisors to implement and enforce reforms also. So thank you very much. I hope the committees that you have studied in the previous module, in the previous part and module, has been supporting corporate governance as far as India, and SEBI's initiatives through different committees have all taken a cue from the different committees which has operated worldwide. So if you learn those committees, you will be able to understand the Indian corporate governance better. So I request all of you to read the previous slides also, understand that, and based on that start comparing as to how corporate governance worldwide has impacted Indian corporate governance also. So this topic has been presented by Naipunya Business School, and if you have any clarifications, you're free to write to Naipunya Business School, or you could even subscribe to our videos, and you can send your comment across through videos also, or you can even directly write to me also at hod@mbanimit.ac.in. So thank you very much for being attending this class, and I hope it is clear. If you have got any clarification, please to contact me on the email. Thank you very much.